All right, everyone, welcome back for another episode of Carnivore Trade. Today is Monday, June 27th, 2022. If you're not done so already, give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe, etc. You come find me on carnivoretrades.com for swing trading alerts and analysis. Well, anyways, here we had a little bit of a pause day in the markets. Nothing too out of the ordinary as stocks, just kind of taking a breather after the big surge last Friday. Here you can take a look at the spiders. So, big gap up from Thursday to Friday, and then the surge here, and especially in the last 15 minutes there, or 10 minutes there of Friday, big move. So no real surprise that we're taking a little bit of a breather. We basically, we filled this gap, and we're basically kissing that 20 moving average there. Same thing on the triple Qs. So just getting above that 20 moving average and kind of hammering on this trend line now. So nice little pop here for the markets and a little bit of a pullback. Last week I said that the volume, as the volume kind of declines as we get closer to the holiday, that would bode well for the upside. And as you can see here, the VIX is pulling back here. It's slightly positive here. We had a nice gap up this morning, but look at the fade here intraday on the VIX. Take a look at UVXY here. Really a negative open, tested the flat line, and then getting pummeled all day long. So volatility really taking a hit, and even bond yields, which are up, the 10-year was up about 2.5% today, 2.2% on the 10-year there. Really couldn't do much, and that's what happens when you have light volume, and when you have volatility starting to fade. Is some of this bad news and some of the bad macro doesn't really even shake the market. So that's kind of what we get here, and we've been talking about, we're looking for kind of a summer rally here. We may get a pullback this week. But it looks like this market's behaving well at the moment. We talked about the triple Qs coming into that 20 moving average, stalling out there. But again, outperforming, you got above the high pivot from June 10th on that major CPI gap down. And when I see tech outperforming the spiders, that's a good thing. Another thing that I see here is the Russell 2000's up 0.5% today. So IWM, getting back above this pivot, looks like it's going to close above that. So you negated that breakdown. And seeing the Russell green with the other indices red is a good sign. So that is, a little bit of a risk on kind of indicator. And, overall, nothing terrible out here. So a little bit of a pause day. And there's nothing out of the ordinary when that happens after a big surge. So we'll probably look for a little bit more consolidation here on the daily time frame, and then if we do that, we can possibly put a another leg up. I don't see us getting through 400 on the spiders at this point. Maybe we can fill this gap by the end of the week, but not significantly higher than 400, at least at this point. But again, we'll take it one day at a time, and overall, again, nothing really wrong here with the market. So flipping over to some sectors here. So inside of tech, semiconductors basically flat. They are a little bit outperforming though. So last week I voiced some concerns about the semis not really participating in the rally, and they still haven't. But semis flat today after the gap up, and then we look at IGV, which has been outperforming. This is down almost 2%, and the triple Qs here are actually down 75 basis points. So to see the semis flat is actually not a terrible sign, not a terrible thing, not a terrible sign, all things considered. So there is a little bit of, positivity to this. We'll have to see, one day doesn't make a trend, but it is something to keep an eye on here. We do have earnings later this week. I think Micron reports Thursday, so that can affect the market as well. But Intel getting a little bit of a bid today, up 25 basis points. Micron is up as well, so that could see some short covering going into Thursday. By the way, I am long Micron, full disclosure, just so everybody is aware of that. But nice pop today for Micron. Some of the other semis, like NVIDIA, a little bit of a laggard there, and AMD down as well. But again, nothing terrible, little inside pattern there. We'll see if that can continue higher. We talked about IGV. It is pulling back a little bit, down almost 2%. But again, nice little pop off the lows, and this has been a strong sector really for tech and really for the whole market. It's been really outperforming, especially since the bottom there. And again, nice little inside pattern. If this pulls back, there's some good stocks to look at. Zoom's been making higher highs. CRM, Salesforce, has a decent pattern. ServiceNow, some of these things are outperforming here, and these could be potential long setups moving forward. Even, Cloudflare here coming nicely off the lows. that's a pretty, it doesn't look like much, but I mean, you got it, $37, $38 to 50 in really a week there. So some of these stocks getting mega short squeezes, and really just kind of punishing the late shorts to the market. But in any case, IGV holding up, XBI biotech also holding up, holding the flat line. Another sector here, $62 all the way to 77. Pretty big surge there, and now starting to consolidate. So this is another sector. Look at this, possible W pattern. If it pulls back a little bit, you could put in the V, and you could get another leg up, maybe to that 85 handle. So XBI holding up really well. Even Tesla here also has a potential for kind of a W pattern. If you get a pullback, I do like this for a move up. Some of these other names, Apple, Microsoft, all kind of have that same pattern, that same look. So again, if we do get that summer rally like we were talking about, this could be that setup that gets us there. But again, we'll take it one day at a time. We'll see what we get tomorrow. Dow Transport's moving on here. So again, we talked about Dow Transport's being a little bit on the weaker side. And again, struggling with that 20 moving average. Nice surge on Friday. You basically came up and filled this gap, just shy of filling the gap. And now you're pulling back off the 20. So this is going to have resistance at this trend line unless we can consolidate. If we can continue to consolidate, then it can get through that. And, you probably have upside to that 14.3 area. 14,000 right in this area, but that 50 moving average looks like it wants to get tested. But again, we'll see if it pulls back a little bit more and puts in a pattern. So moving on here, we talked about yields a little bit. Really nothing too crazy going on. We had the nice surge. We pulled back. We talked about coming into this green bar. We talked about the 20 moving average, and we're just getting a little bounce off of that. So the key here is to look for, does this put in a lower high? And if it does, then you can take out this pivot and you can come back here and test this area. Same thing on the 30-year. If it puts in a lower high and takes this pivot out, it probably wants to go back and test that 2.95 area on the 30-year. HYG here, again, a little bit of an inside day, just like everything else. JNK, same thing. LQD pulling back a little bit, looks a lot more like TLT. But again, high yield debt pulling back just like everything else after the big move on Friday. So another sector, interesting, XHB here. So there was pending home sales. There was a surprise jump in pending home sales, which ended a 6-month decline. So that helped out XHB as well as ITB. There were the ITB up 26 basis points, XHB up 10. Not a big move, all things considered, but in a down market, it's outperforming. So it is bucking the trend a little bit. And again, that was positive news. But even with negative news, it's hard for this market to sell off with light volume. So also bear that in mind. VNQ, a little bit of an inside day here as well. I actually love this for a short setup right here. The only problem is it's a very slow mover, and I don't see it getting through really $90 at this point. So, I mean, that gives you maybe 3 points on the downside, which is like 4%. And, if you look at the option spreads, you say, well, let's just leverage it with options. It's kind of hard here because you got a 15-cent spread on the July expiry. Same thing, really, you got 15, 20-cent spread on the August expiry. It's really hard to trade this here and get a favorable price. Or if you use common shares, again, there's really not much downside. It's kind of a slow mover, but I really like this short setup here for a little pullback. But it is what it is. In any case, inside day, if this consolidates a little bit more and maybe pulls back, again, this will get an ABC up just like everything else. But if this was a faster mover, I would already be in this short for a nice little scalp pullback. Anyways, XLF here, financials, down 0.5%. Again, you came up here, filled this gap. So again, this is also the area where you could, you had these two tail candles, so you couldn't break through that area. You broke down, you gapped below it. So it's getting back tested right now. But again, just like everything else, if it consolidates here, you can get an ABC up and push higher. Broker dealers, same thing. Broker dealers actually positive today. But again, a little bit of a, almost kind of like a hammer doji here. So again, probably needs to do a little bit more backing and filling. If it does, then it can move higher. Crude here. So crude getting a little bit of a bounce. So continuing that bounce off this blue trend line, stalling out at that 50 MA. We'll see what kind of pattern it puts in. Again, it's going to have resistance between about 113 and 115. So we'll see if it puts in a lower high. and then comes here and takes out this pivot low, it has downside to probably 95 and then ultimately 90 and 85. That's what I'm really looking for it to go back test, but we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves here. In the near term, right now, we're just looking for a potential lower high on the daily. XLE, so again, just bounce, getting a bounce just like crude. First target here is going to be your trend line here that you broke through. So a back test there. It also coincides with that 100 moving average. Then if you get through that, you got 80 and 83. So there's your 50 MA gap window and then gap fill at 83. So somewhere in that area, if you do bounce that high, that's where I would expect it to find some resistance. But XLE getting a little bit of a bounce. Same thing with XOP and OIH. So OIH is much weaker here. Really kind of struggling with this 200 MA, but we'll see if it can get above that. Then you can go back and back test 250 and then maybe 260. So a little bit more upside here in energy, I think, before we have a little bit more of a corrective move. Nat gas here getting a nice bounce off that 6 handle. I was looking for it to pierce through that a little bit, get down to this trend line, but it's getting a nice bounce. So I think this does follow through, and we should have upside to about 7, maybe 750 in the near term, although I do expect it to head lower at some point after that. Dollar index trying to break through this pennant here, but it did finish off the lows. It held that 20 moving average. So again, a dollar remains strong. Nothing you can really say about it outside of that. It's been strong here. Got to respect it. And until it starts to break trend, it's really a tough trade on the sell side. Gold here, kind of a nothing burger, pulling back off that 200 again, inverse to the dollar. So is what it is there. Silver, a little bit on the weaker side. Did get a pop earlier, but couldn't hold the gains. Same thing with platinum. You're now flirting with this double bottom. Remember over the weekend, I showed you guys, you could, broke down through this trend line on a weekly close last week. So that is a little problematic for platinum. It's trying to hold up for now, but I do expect it to go lower here in the near term, near to medium term rather. And palladium, same kind of thing. You tried to get through that 20 MA, and now that red bar held. So this is a test candle on the upside, and it failed. So palladium can head lower here. Your support really last line outside of this tail candle is about 1625. So palladium a little bit on the weaker side here, and I do expect that to head lower as well. Copper here also trying to bounce. You put in a really nice tail on Friday, but no follow through. So really kind of a dead cat bounce there on copper. We'll have to see a little bit more with the pattern here moving forward. And then speaking of dead cats, here's Bitcoin. So again, really didn't participate much with the rally on Friday. We made note of that. Again, crypto remains weak, and now it's starting to roll over. It hasn't even gotten to the 20 moving average, and we're starting to kind of roll a little bit here. Doesn't mean it can't put in a higher low and eventually get through that. I think there's a good chance of that happening. You may have upside to about 25,000 if that happens, but again, crypto has been a weak sector, and you just got to respect that at this point. Again, there's a constant barrage of negativity, negative news coming out with crypto, and it's just been really hard for this sector to get a bid. Anyways here, so let's get back to the spiders. So we're starting to fade just a tiny little bit here. I don't expect much to amount of it. We probably do pull back a little bit more here as we get into Tuesday, Wednesday, and then I think it's likely we get some type of a float here. With the light volume going into a holiday weekend, it's just typically what happens here. Unless the volume really comes back in this market and volatility remains low, I don't expect anything really less at this point. So we'll see what we get here. Again, Russell 2000 continuing to outperform. That is a good sign. And, again, with the light volume, I don't really see this market pulling back too much, or at least fading heavily at this point. Anyways, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. Take care. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow.